Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay. All right, so we'll start recording. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Carr, and I'm coordinator for the Coastal Marine Ecosystem-Based Management Tools Network. We welcome everyone to today's webinar. This webinar is co-hosted by the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership and openchannels.org. We are very pleased to have everyone here, a number of presenters here today. We have Linwood Pendleton and Megan Jungwiwa Tanataporn from Duke University representing the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership. And we have Jonathan Kochmer and Corinne Cooley from Earth Economics representing the Ecosystem Valuation Toolkit. Unfortunately, Sandra Vanderplug from the Ecosystem Services Partnership from the Netherlands was not able to make it to represent the Ecosystem Services Valuation Database, but we have plenty to cover with those that we have, so we'll go ahead and get rolling. One thing I did want to let everyone know before we get started, though, is how to ask questions. There's two ways to ask questions during the webinar. First, you can type the question into the question panel, and then our moderator, Linwood Pendleton, will either answer the question himself or address or have one of the other presenters answer the question. And the other way to ask questions is to raise your virtual hand, and you can do that by hitting the hand icon in your user interface, and then someone will unmute you and you can ask the question directly. So again, welcome everyone, and I will turn it over to Linwood, our co-host.
Good. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to everybody for joining us, especially the people that I accidentally knocked off of the webinar early on, including Richard and Fanar and Monica and others. You know, there are a number of databases and libraries out there about ecosystem services that are developing. Many of them are our partners here at the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership, and so what we wanted to do is work with the EVM Tools Network and Open Channels to bring these databases directly to you and let the directors, owners, and founders of these databases tell you what they have in their database, why they designed it the way they did, and also to let you ask questions directly of these database managers. And this is a great opportunity to provide input about what you found works and doesn't work for you. So with that in mind, we decided to reach out to our partners at Earth Economics and the Ecosystem Services Partnership. We will try to revisit the Ecosystem Services Partnership, which is up to their eyeballs right now and preparing for their international meeting in Bali next week. But hopefully in the fall we'll be able to come back to them. I want to start, though, by letting Megan, who is the director of our Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership, tell you a little bit about our website, particularly the library that's there, and give you some background for that. Then we'll go to Jonathan, and about 1:40 we'll take your questions and spend maybe 20 minutes or so on that, and then wrap up with some upcoming events notices. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go to Megan, and Megan, take it away.
Hi everyone, this is Megan here. So I work with Linwood at the Nicholas Institute for Environmental Policy Solutions at Duke University. And one of my main projects is coordinating the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership, or MESP. So the MESP really began in 2010 as a response to the growing number of valuation studies being developed around the world. And as we talked to our partners, we realized there was a lot of information being developed, but it wasn't necessarily being found easily or being used to the best advantage. So, and it wasn't necessarily getting to the hands of decision makers. So with the help of our partners, we decided to put together a virtual library of marine and coastal ecosystem service valuation studies, as well as a community of practice so that people interested in this information could discuss it and connect with each other. So a couple years on, that is what the MESP has become. Oops. Today the MESP is a central repository and portal for ocean valuation data, as well as a toolbox, we offer a spatial data explorer. So if you visit our website, you can find our library of studies, which is searchable by country and ecosystem type. More in just a minute.
All right, we're losing Megan. Megan? We're losing Megan. Linwood, would you want to fill in for a little bit?
Yes, sure.
In the South Pacific and Latin America.
Megan?
So we're really...
Megan?
Did I hear someone say?
Yeah, sorry, this is Sarah. Your sound is coming in and out, so we might have Linwood fill in for a few minutes, and then we could try again in a little bit.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
Okay, Linwood? Should I make you presenter, or?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead. Okay. So I'll try to take over from Megan here. The idea...
Fine with me.
Okay. Go ahead and mute Megan.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay. So as Megan was saying, the idea here was to make this vast library of ecosystem services information available to people around the world in a way that was easy to access, but also through the community of practice have ways of having people communicate to each other about what ecosystem services information they found useful. We found, for instance, that people in one country may be looking for ecosystem services information that is in the process of being developed or was recently published in a nearby country. And so this community of practice combined with the library helps us start pulling all that together. We've also used the community of practice in our listserv, which has more than 500 members now, to disseminate information, talk about recent events, and new papers as they become available. And so we've been able to feature a lot of new research that normally would get buried in journals as soon as it's fresh off the presses, and get that out through our website and through the newsletter. The database that we have right now is large and growing. It has over 800 studies there and 2,000 values that we've pulled out as factoids. We're not a database, and so one of the things that you'll hear about when Jonathan speaks is that these databases go to a great deal of effort to try to reach into these studies and take the values that are there and put them all into some kind of consistent format. That requires a lot of effort and a lot of time, and it's very costly. Instead, what we've tried to do here is identify values as they're presented in the paper and give the website user an idea of what kind of information is in the study. But ultimately, we really want to help people find studies that are appropriate for their work or for the kind of conservation policy they're involved in. And then we want to connect you with those studies. So towards that end, we have now collected more than 500 PDFs of these studies that we have in the database. We're able to share these articles and reports and working papers one at a time with you through our educational copyright license. So we can't post the PDF online, but if you can't find the PDF because you're not associated with your university or your institution doesn't carry the journal, chances are we have a copy of the original study. And so if you see something on the website that you can't find otherwise, please just send us an email and we're able to send that directly to you. The other thing that we've done here is we've made it possible for you to send us studies that are not in our database that you've come across so we can load them up to the library. This is really important for the expanding gray literature on ecosystem service values, master's thesis, PhD thesis that don't get published. So we're finding that the community of practice now becomes the self-generating library. We're able to pull these things together. Okay. It's a partnership, and the partnership has been growing as well. We have some founding partners. Institutionally, the Nicholas Institute has worked very closely with the Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab at Duke University. That Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab is responsible for hosting biological data from the Census of Marine Life and other places. And we built this with the Marine Geospatial Ecology Lab in part so that one day we could connect our ecosystem service valuation data directly with biological data, ecological attribute data, and we want to keep expanding this to include information about cultural services, et cetera. The Ocean Foundation was a founding administrative partner. And our working partners include Conservation International, IUCN, NOAA, and the Ecosystem Services, Ecosystem Commons. These original partners, including WRI, really came together because databases that they had been working with on ecosystem service values either had become old, were not getting updated regularly because they were no longer high priorities, or there was something else going on that made them incapable of hosting these databases anymore. Others, like the Hart Institute, the National Ocean Economics Program, they had databases that were happening, but they were really focusing on either specific geographies or particular types of values. So all these partners came together and created this Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership. We meet regularly as a group, the partners do, but we also meet internationally and at the Ecosystem Services Partnership. That's not my background noise, just someone can mute. There we go. The Ecosystem Services Partnership meeting in Bali will have 2 days of sessions on marine ecosystem services, and so the MESP has helped to organize that with all of our partners there. That's going to be very exciting. It's going to include sessions on using ecosystem service information to better finance marine protected areas and other kinds of areas, create payments for ecosystem services. We're going to have a special session on TEEB for oceans and coasts, what the next steps are in collecting feedback, and really trying to push forward the marine ecosystem services part of that larger international ecosystem services partnership. If you go into the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership webpage, one of the things that you'll see at the top is Explore Ecosystem Services. And what this does is it lets you have entree into the library. It's the card catalog, if you will, for those of you who are old enough to remember what a card catalog is. And our card catalog is divided into 2 main ways of searching the data. One is you can search the data geographically by looking up different kinds of exclusive economic zones. Those are the contiguous areas that are shaded on the map. And you can click in the EEZs of interest to you. So it may be your EEZ, or it may be an EEZ that has similar ecosystem services, similar ecosystems, or similar populations. And so that's been a really useful way of finding ecosystem service information when it's not available for your country. The other type of search is the ecosystem type. While there are a gazillion different ways of categorizing and identifying ecosystem services, and the terminology really is all over the place, there's a much more limited set of terms that have been used for ecosystem types themselves. And so what we've decided to do here in this library is to focus on ecosystem types. So for instance, it might be marshes, coral reefs, mangroves. and you can look up one or more ecosystem type and search for the database, search the database for value information that we have based on that ecosystem type. So here's just, Megan has a screenshot here of the mapper. You can obviously choose whatever EEZ you want. One of the things that we have done also is, so very big countries like the United States that have non-contiguous EEZs, you are able to choose more than one EEZ. And this is the kind of information that you pull up. So not only can you see within an EEZ what's going on in terms of valuation studies, but for each of the valuation studies, if you click on more information, you'll see that it has the bibliographic information, primary country, ecosystem, sample value estimates, what we call factoids. And if other data are available, you'll see that listed too, methodology, region, data source, etc. The entire website and library are also searchable by keywords. So this is also another great way of looking for data and studies. You can type your keyword right in, and it'll bring the study up in the fields below. Okay. I've mentioned, and I think this is the most important point, is that the MESP is really a community of practice built around this library. It's only as good as the participants in that community of practice. It's a great place for you to get your work out there to the public so more people can use this. So we encourage all of you who are on the line here who either know about forthcoming ecosystem service valuation studies or have done some on your own or been involved in this and you're not seeing it here on the website, to please contact us directly. Either send us an email or go to the website and use the entry fields there. We also encourage you to use the listserv, to join the listserv, to discuss new ideas. I don't know how many of you are members of the Coral listserv, but the MESP listserv is set up in a similar sort of way. So you can ask a question of 500 or more members of this community and get responses very quickly. The MESP has also led to a great deal of collaboration, including, as I mentioned, TEEB for oceans, but ocean acidification, payments for ecosystem services and blue carbon, and the like. It's really a great way to figure out who else is working on the issues that are important to you. So please let us know what you're doing. And invite others, especially people who are not ecosystem service professionals, to join the listserv as well. We have a lot of people now that are on board using this information and using the listserv who beforehand were really not people who maybe consider themselves part of that ecosystem service community, but rather are conservation professionals, coastal and marine managers. And so we're trying always to build up that part of the community practice. And finally, Megan does a great job of putting together newsletters with information about upcoming events, job postings, and we've been featuring spotlights on our partners so you can get more information about our partners from that newsletter. So if you're not already a member of the newsletter, please contact me or Megan afterwards, or info@marineecosystemservices.org. Okay. There you go. That's an example of the newsletter. And just a final couple slides. Going forward, as I mentioned, we really would like to make these ecosystem service values even more useful by putting them in the context of biological data, cultural data, social and demographic data. We'd love to hear from you about what you think is important, how we can fund this, because heretofore we've had very generous funding from our partners, but now we're going to have to start seeking a broader base of funds to do these additional things. So if you know of funds that would help us add these different kinds of data to the website, please let us know. And check back often. The data on the website are updated on a rolling basis, particularly as you and other members of the community send us new information. Okay, that's an example of the studies site where you can add what you've done or new studies that we don't have in our library yet. Okay, and here's the contact info. So there's the email, there's the MESP info, and Earth Economics here is down at the bottom, and they'll be talking to us next. So Jonathan, I think we're ready for you.
Okay,
I'll
switch over to John. And if you wanted to, Linwood, there's a couple of questions. Would you want to save those till the end, or?
Let me see if I can find them. No, I can answer those now. Okay. Let's see here. As researchers, I just have to pull this up since I had the PowerPoint there. So Elizabeth Schuster asks, as researchers, can we enter our own studies into the database, or would we email you a study? So you would, you can upload bibliographic information directly to the website, but we also love to have an email of your studies so we can make the PDF available to people. The information we have is pretty basic, so we can add it for you if that's more convenient. Okay, we have another question from one of our founding partners, Loretta Burke. What sort of quality assurance are you doing on your database content? Entries seem uneven in terms of completeness. So the entries are uneven in the degree to which the data are available from the study that we have. We don't do data quality assurance because it's a library, so we're not saying at this point whether the ecosystem service valuation estimates are good or bad, and that's why we want you to read the reports so you can decide on your own whether they're good or bad or good enough. One of the things that we found is that the rigor that's needed to use these kinds of data depends very much on what you hope to do with it. If you find a place or a field where you think there's information that you don't see there currently, you can also email us and we can add that as we go along. Noman Kadir asks, is the MESP focused on the US or other parts of the world? If you look at the database, you'll see that we've tried to cover everywhere on the planet we could find an ecosystem service valuation study. And so you'll see a preponderance of studies from the United States and Europe, partly because there have been so many studies done there. But many of the studies come from all around the world. I would say there are certainly places like Africa where we have fewer than we'd like, and we're always searching for more.
And Linwood, there was sort of the very first question you answered that someone asked if you take unpublished studies. This ties into Loretta's question as well.
Yeah, we do take unpublished studies. And when I referred to the gray literature, this is a place where we know that there are lots of very good valuation studies that have been done, but are not novel enough, for instance, to land in a journal. So we take unpublished studies, we take working papers, and if there is a working paper that corresponds to a published study, we'll try to provide both of those in the library because quite often the working papers have information in it that journal papers just don't have. So they're much more complete.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sam asks, is there a trend analysis being conducted on the various studies? For example, are there trends emerging on preferred methodologies, common challenges in valuation, et cetera? What we've seen is that there are people conducting trends analysis based on subsets of the data you can find in the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership Library at this point. So we're not doing that trend analysis. NOAA has been working on a study of ecosystem service valuations in the United States, and they've been using the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership as a library to do that. So clearly the raw material here, but we're not working on that specifically. Marcia Curry asks, is there information on ongoing studies, projects, or only through submitted reports? So one of the things this is a really good question, and one of the things that we hope to do with TEEB for Oceans is create a separate layer about ongoing studies. And we would just do that using the same EEZ format. So this is something that I think we can get done by the end of the year, particularly if there's interest from people like Marcia and members of our community to do that. Okay, and finally, Derek Pelletier asks, in addition to researchers providing you with their work, what other strategies do you have for populating the library? Can you briefly describe your literature search strategy? So Megan does Google searches frequently, but most of our strategy at this point is through the community of practice and reminding people in that community of practice to constantly be reaching out to us. When we go to these conferences, that's another good way of getting firsthand information about what's underway and forthcoming. But if you have other ideas about ways of getting at that information, particularly the gray literature, we'd be happy to hear them.
Okay. All right, let me make Jonathan presenter again.
Okay.
I think he was, okay. All right, Jonathan, you're up.
Alrighty. Let me share my screen. Is my screen
We are
showing
seeing
now?
your screen, yes, and if you could make your PowerPoint full screen, do it in presentation mode.
Yep. Okay, has it spawned to the webinar? It's full screen on my...
No, not yet. Why don't you click through? We'll see. Seems to be a little frozen. Oh, there we go. All right. Now
Okay.
we are seeing it full screen.
Okay, and Corinne has joined us too. Do you see her? So you're ready to switch over to her?
Is she in under Corinne C-O? I'm not seeing her yet.
Corinne, can you unmute and identify yourself?
Oh, she's under your name. Aha. I think you sent, let me go look for another
Oh,
you.
I sent her my
yes,
my
yes.
credentials
All right.
because you
Yes.
couldn't find hers.
All right. Yeah, okay. Make panelist. Yes. Okay. And all right. Okay. Corinne?
Yes.
We should be able to hear you now. Okay. Yes. All right.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
Sorry about that.
Okay, super. Thank you very much, Linwood, for the presentation on MESP, and Sarah for hosting this great series. We'll be talking today about the current status of Earth Economics Ecosystem Valuation Toolkit, which we've been working on very intensively since about 2011, but it does have a longer history that I'll allude to briefly. Let's see.
Corinne, do you still want to be presenter for your portion? I can switch over to you.
For my portion, yes. That will be in a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you know when to switch.
Okay.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with Earth Economics, we were founded in 1998 very specifically to do ecosystem service valuations, and that has really been the bread and butter of our activities. But we're also very, very interested in having these values be deployed in influencing policy and affecting ecosystem service valuation practice. And our tagline is, we value the earth, which is kind of a double meaning. We both engage in valuation, but of course we have an existential appreciation for the planet. And the importance of the work that MESP and ESP and we are doing is really come to the forefront with the new principles and requirements that are mandating an ecosystem services approach. And you don't have to read this whole slide right now. I'll be posting this later, but the URL for the new principles and requirements are included here. And essentially, it says that the ecosystem services should be included in any activities by federal agencies or departments that have impact upon or jurisdiction over natural resources and ecosystems, in particular water. And Earth Economics, as I said, has been doing these sorts of evaluations since 1998, and currently we're working at many different scales in different parts of the world, ranging from urban parks at the very small scale to a new project where we're doing ecosystem service valuations of the entire Colorado River Basin. And also in terms of our impact on affecting policy, we're also the data provider to FEMA's benefit cost analysis tool, and the ecosystem service values that we calculated from components of the Ecosystem Valuation Toolkit are now actually included in the official FEMA documents concerning compensation and mitigation activities. Another area of policy that we're very excited about is looking at the GASB and FASB rules for accounting. And we're currently working with water utilities around the nation and have had a letter of conveyance to FASB, which in their 2014 meeting will consider extending accounting rules to allow utilities to include the value of ecosystem services on the utilities' balance sheets, which could have profound implications. But today we're going to focus specifically on the Ecosystem Valuation Toolkit and show you where we're at, and hopefully engage in discussion here and subsequently. Of course, the valuation data can come from many sources, whether it be empirical measurement, boots on the ground, eyes in the sky. We're starting a collaboration with the European Space Agency, for example, to incorporate remote imaging and Earth observation data. The data can also come from production function models, such as ARIES, INVEST, MIMES. Some of you may not yet be familiar with the Ecological Production Function Library at EPA, and we've been working very closely with that team to map their database with ours. And of course, you can do benefit transfer and function transfer. As I mentioned, we've been working with this database since 1998. We inherited, like others, a database from the Gund Institute at the University of Vermont. And by 2008, we had hundreds of values, and we were able, with this repository, to do ecosystem service valuations for fairly large scales in the course of about a year. And then we refined our techniques, and then we were able to speed up the process of doing ecosystem valuations to 2.5 months, and even in one urgent case for the Wisconsin Wetlands Association, we were able to do a very rapid, very rough ecosystem service valuation of all of Wisconsin's wetlands in a very, very long weekend. We're not doing this all by ourselves. We're very proud to have a very high quality advisory board that is counseling us on how we're approaching the construction of the database and how to deploy it. And you'll see many of the luminaries of the ecological economics world. And of course, we have partners like just like MESP. Again, this is a collaborative community effort. And unlike MESP, we are aiming to be an actual full-on database with data checking and validation, verification, and continuous updating. So they're very complementary activities. Some of in all of these slides coming up here, the areas that are green are spots that we feel we've made substantial progress on and or are fully deployed. And then the things that are in white are coming up. In particular, some of the upcoming things that I'm very excited about are the compliance to accounting standards, because this data, much of this data, although we're using both monetary and non-monetary values, the monetary values are very likely in the future to have profound impact upon development decisions and economic behavior by actors. So we want, insofar as possible, to have these data be validated or be in accordance with accounting rules. And we're also aiming to be the largest repository of monetary and non-monetary values, cloud-based, so for easy access by anybody in the world. we have currency and PPP conversion and inflation adjustment implemented, and we're working on, we started work on developing APIs or application program interfaces so that we can exchange data with all the other repositories and as well as all of the other modeling tools. The overall, originally when we started thinking about the EVT, it was going to be simply a repository of values and a basic calculator called serves, which would allow people to do benefit transfer based upon the data in the repository. But as we developed this, just like MESP, we realized that there was a whole suite of services that we could and should provide to the community. So there's 5 main components. You'll see 6 blobs up there. Integration is not really a component, but it's essential to link us with other services. Today I'm going to focus briefly just on 3 sections. The resource library is live. This is, like MESP, contains a collection of ecosystem service valuation best practices, introductory materials, exemplary studies, and this is also a portal to our current 4 fee services for contracts and grants. And the repository itself is the data that we are transcribing very meticulously with trained economists to capture as much of the atomic factoids as Linwood said earlier from the studies. Now, not all practitioners necessarily provide all of the same data. Sometimes we will have to get the data from external authoritative sources such as demographic, socioeconomic, biogeophysical data. So we're working on filling out what is initially a kind of a sparse matrix. Another area of great interest to us, and we'll be working with NatureServes in the process of formalizing an MOU, is harmonization of all the different taxonomies for land cover types, vegetation classifications, and so on and so forth. And for example, in the marine context, there are many, many different ways of classifying marine ecosystems, and we're working on including all of those different classification systems, and then ultimately crosswalking them. Oh yeah, and returning to a question that was asked of Linwood earlier, we're also hoping that this repository will be used for all sorts of gap analyses and historical trend analysis of ecosystem service valuation practice. We currently have 45,000 candidate ecosystem service studies. Not all of them will necessarily have ecosystem service values in them, but you can see here that there's 3,400 from the US, 855 from Canada, 1,555 from China. So it's fairly good global coverage, and we're working on, of course, just like MESP, on trying to identify any study anywhere in the world. And from those 45,000 studies, we are identifying those studies that have values and then transcribing them into the repository. And we've identified approximately, I think the latest count is about 6,700 values from that 45,000 collection, and there will be more. Corinne will now demonstrate the process that we use for entering this data, and this is an interface that we will be making available to the global community for transcribing published and or unpublished data so that it can be made available to the world. Corinne?
Hello. All right, thank you all so very much, and here's a little bit of a dive into the tool itself as it exists. So as Jonathan mentioned, this is the portion of the tool that's focused on bringing data into the repository and working with it.
Corinne?
Yes.
I think I've never actually told a presenter this, but you're actually quite loud. So we can turn down our volume, but also you might, if you could move a little farther away from your mic.
How's that? Is that a little bit better?
Oh, maybe a little closer now.
All right. How about that?
Perfect. Perfect.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for letting me know. So first I want to just sort of give you a little peek into that slice of 44,000 studies that Jonathan mentioned by doing a search for title in our database here. And I do have the search saved just in case my internet decides to be slow, but let's see what we get. There we are. So at the top here you can see this particular study is one that we've actually gone through the process, which I will show you next, of full manual transcription. However, all these studies below are the studies that are in that giant database that Jonathan referred to, and you can see that there are many studies here, and we'll be able to pull these in as we sort of process them and figure out which ones are the ones that we want to focus on pulling into the database more fully and flushing out so that we can use them for evaluation. But I just wanted to give you a bit of a slice of that to get a sense of the magnitude of how much data is actually in here. So going back up here, let's just do another search for that is likely of interest to our marine researchers, is eelgrass. And we actually have a healthy slice of studies here for that as well. So there's just a lot of depth of data in this database, but what I want to actually do here is go in and take a look at what a study looks like once it's been fully pulled into the system, and what kind of data we're capturing and how that looks and is represented. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So you can see here that there are a great deal of fields for a great deal of areas, and I'm actually going to pull open the sidebar here that gives you sort of an overview of what is in this study. These are the different sort of segments of data that we transcribe. So you can see there's the study itself here up at the top, there's the site, which is Echo Bay, there's the ecosystem, the services, the valuation methodologies, and the values. And you can see that there can be more than one of these and that they're nested in this sort of tree structure that allows us to capture the full complexity of these studies that contain multiple values and data at various different levels. So I just want to sort of briefly give you a little bit of a picture of how deep the data is that's being collected for each of these areas. For example, we have latitude and longitude centroid. You can see those little stars. Those are required fields for every single study that is transcribed in this way. We'll have that information, which goes back to some of those external data sources that Jonathan spoke to. We'll be able to tap into layers of GIS data using this information that may not have been originally available with the study itself. So we think that's going to be very powerful. I want to actually pause here and take a little bit of a deeper look at ecosystem descriptor for some areas that I think may be interesting to those of you who are curious, hey, how well does this represent marine studies? So as you can see, the ecosystem taxonomy we have is multiple levels. There's also multiple types. And it's based off of the TEEB ecosystem taxonomy. So this will probably look familiar to many of you. However, because there are so many different ways to capture what kind of, I'm going to use the word land cover, I realize that's a little problematic for marine applications, but nevertheless there's a lot of these different taxonomies for capturing this information, and we've made them all available here, not all, a number of them, and we're going to have more available here so that folks can define what what their study is capturing in these multiple taxonomies, and that will allow us to start building that network of how taxonomies translate, as Jonathan spoke to earlier. We have ecoregion data can be captured here, and so we definitely allow a fair degree of specificity with that, and it's all conditionally defined. And we have a number of specifically marine taxonomies, which may be familiar to some of you. The CMEX is not fully captured here. That's a very complex system, but we wanted to sort of make a start at that so we could begin capturing that data. But we also have the MEOW, wonderful name, taxonomy represented down all the way down to the ecoregion level, as well as just the very basic goods system. So speaking also to the ecosystem service level, flashing back to my study here, we also have a great deal of data and number of taxonomies captured there, including our ecosystem services taxonomy will also be familiar, as it is based heavily on the TEEB structure as well, so that should look fairly similar. There are some slight changes that you might notice here, but we also have the CICES taxonomy as well as the MEA and sort of the strict TEEB taxonomy as opposed to our modified one, as well as allowing folks to specify any taxonomies we may be unfamiliar with so that we can begin collecting that data and adding those into our system as we figure out that people want to use them. Breezing very quickly, I know we're a little low on time, but we also capture, of course, valuation methodology data. There's a number of different methodologies that we permit here. Folks can specify primary, secondary, market-based, all the levels of specificity, and as you can see, it actually goes down 3 levels of specificity. And finally, lots of information about the actual numbers themselves that are being represented within the study and that will be carried through to be used by calculations, which brings me very neatly to our other little demonstration, which Jonathan will be giving.
Okay, Jonathan? Jonathan?
Yeah,
Okay,
hi.
oh, there you are. Okay.
All right. Do you want to be presenter again?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, make presenter.
Well, Jonathan, we'll need to wrap this up in about 5 minutes or so.
Oh, we're ready?
Okay.
Okay, is it displaying yet?
Yes, we're seeing it displayed.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, another major component of the Valuation Toolkit is the actual computational engine that allows the use of the data in here for benefit transfer. This is a prototype, so please excuse a few things about it. It's not fully populated with all of the values that we have, and nor does it have all of the taxonomies regularized like they are in the section that Corinne was showing. But essentially what you could do is say, I want to select a region. Regions can be defined a priori, such as, by World Wildlife Federation or biomes or ecoregions or any other geographic criteria, but they can also be defined by the user. So for example, I have created in my account a estuaries set of studies that I want to collect, and as you mouse over you can see a little bit more detail about what's contained in the study. So if I want to do a valuation, and let's say I want to use all of these studies just arbitrarily, they are now included in this studies thing. I can also choose to pull out a study. I'll arbitrarily yank that one out. And of course, this is the part of making the computational engine that's very, very complicated, because within Earth economics we are intimately familiar with all the studies and understand their applicability for a particular benefit transfer, and we're working on codifying that expert knowledge into this interface so that people will be guided to best practices, although there will be an override option for truly expert users. And then I can do a classification of the, okay, what's going on here? So at any rate, once these studies have been collected, then you can do calculations to get the ecosystem service values. Currently this pops out to an Excel file. And so here we have the low and
Jonathan,
high values.
Are you showing the Excel file? What we're seeing is still the interface page for the toolkit.
Oh, let me hit show my screen. I might have.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes, we are now.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I inadvertently hit the stop sharing. In this sample report, we see the low and high values that have been reported for these different ecosystem services for estuaries. And, you know, as is typical in literature, depending upon the geographic location or the socioeconomics of the study area, the values can range quite a bit. And we're also working to include errors of estimates and where there's sufficient data, standard deviations, and things of that sort. We can also slice and dice this way and see the, this is for, hang on a second here. And so this is given the fact that we had a 1,500 acre estuary, this is a rough estimate of the total value of ecosystem services for that particular region. And then of course you can also get a report on which particular studies had been included for this analysis and get the original values that the studies had reported. But this is very much a work in progress. Again, what we have here is a prototype, and this is now becoming now that we've got the repository database design pretty much established, this is becoming our primary area of focus. Let's see, I want to return back to my PowerPoint presentation. So we are working on this serves part right now, and we have internally methods for extracting this data and creating reports, and that underlies all of the ecosystem service valuations that Earth Economics does internally, including those approximately 12 current projects that I mentioned. And as I mentioned, we've mapped to the EPA's Ecological Production Function Library, and we're working on codifying the expert knowledge of our trained ecological economists so that other users externally could use these computational tools. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. I just want to show actually one more thing here. You got a sense of the depth and breadth of the kinds of values that we're pulling from the studies, but I just want to show you at a very high level the data structure. And so we have roughly 450 discrete fields that we're collecting, and they range, of course, from the bibliographic information, which is highly regularized in EndNote XML format. We're collecting information about all of the parties that are involved with all of the publications, including such things as, you know, who is the granting agency. We're working on verification and credibility rankings. We're working also on keeping complete transactional history of all changes to the database, such that if a study is done from our system and, let's say, is challenged in a court of law, we can roll back to the database from the time that the study had been calculated to demonstrate, yes, indeed, this is demonstrably the set of values that are calculated. We talked about site characterization, the GIS information where possible, all these different land cover and marine classifications, and we're also working on getting the authoritative biogeophysical information from authoritative sources. We're working on, of course, the anthropospheric characteristics, all the different ecosystem service classifications, valuation methodologies, and so on. So that's a overview, and I think I'm officially out of time.
Yeah, let's go to some questions here, and we've had 3 questions that are all very similar from Derek, Sam, and now Charlene, asking about how one gets access to the toolkit, whether it's available on a fee-for-service basis or is open access.
We are pretty close to launching the transcription component that Corinne showed, and as well as the searching of the XML repository of the 45,000 studies. The computational engine part, we were hoping to launch it this coming quarter originally, but we've decided that there is a lot of the devils are in the details for doing these calculations. And again, we want to make sure that this service is not misused, or that it's that there's expert guidance in study selection and transfer. So we're working increasingly closely with external ecological economists to shore up the defensibility of the computational engine. So what you should do if you want to stay up to date on Access is send an email to evt@eartheconomics.org. That's evt@eartheconomics.org, and you'll be put on a notification list.
And so which parts of the tool will be available for free and which will be available for a fee?
The transcription will be available for free. The XML searching will probably be available for free in certain ways. Of course, this is, as you know, Linwood, this is a very time-consuming and costly process, so we do have to have some sort of fee structures, and we're working on the business model, which will have a sliding scale ranging from small NGOs to large consulting firms, and there will also be different ways of slicing and dicing the repository, such maybe that it's geographic or marine versus terrestrial and so on. So we're still working on coming up with a self-sustaining business model.
Yep. Good. And you mentioned 450 fields. That's a lot of work, which is why that business model is such a tough nut to crack. We have 10 fields, and consequently, we don't provide the same kind of data that you do, but at a much lower cost. Marjorie Wellman asks, does the toolkit contain just studies that have already been done, or is there also a collection of tools that might be used in a study?
I'm sorry, you faded a little bit there?
Yep, so Marjorie Wellman's asking, is it that this is, you talked about the studies that are in here, but does it contain other tools besides the computational tool, or is it really just based on these, is it just sort of the studies and then the computation?
Yeah, as I mentioned, that's an excellent question, Marjorie. Thank you. As I mentioned, we will be supporting gap analysis and trend analysis and various statistical tools for looking at, basically most all of the values in the repository will be available for statistical analysis or meta-analysis and things of that sort. And we feel that by pulling all this information together in one place, this really becomes an essential tool for ecosystem service valuation, akin to what, say, GenBank did for genetics. It will really allow all kinds of really good science to be done with this information.
Okay, good. Robert Griffin asks a question about your reference to accounting standards. And he says, does this mean that valuation studies that do not use strict accounting methods will not be included, or were you referring to something else?
There will be flags associated with all of the studies. So, and that, as I mentioned, is an area that we are just starting to work on. So the strict correspondence, for example, with the SSAE 16 accounting standards, that might be a subset of all the values in there, and that's an area of active research right now.
So, and that would be a filter?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. So you could take the big list and say, well, which ones meet these accounting standards, if that was your goal?
Exactly,
right.
Exactly.
Okay, good. And then Noman Kedar asked a question that I think was answered by some of your screenshots, but he said, do you have any studies from the Middle East, North Africa, Indian Ocean, places near Sri Lanka, Maldives, UAE, etc.?
Yes.
I think you had a couple. Yep. Good. Okay.
Yeah, and again, we're really hoping that this will become a truly comprehensive global repository. And as I mentioned, we are also adding to those 450 fields that we were already collecting to include outputs from production function models and other tools like Invest and MIMES and Aries. So as studies are done with other tools, they can then be inputs into our system. And this will, of course, also be an incredibly valuable resource for people using those tools to get some baseline information before they run their tools' computations.
Okay, good. Well, I don't see any other questions here, so thank you, Jonathan, for giving us that presentation, and thank you, Sarah, for hosting this. I want to turn it over to Nick just to give us an announcement about an upcoming office hours.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Nick Weiner from the Open Channels. I just wanted to let you all know that we are doing a office hour live chat with Linwood on October 2nd. That's a Wednesday. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Pacific. It's going to pertain to ecosystem services and the MESP project. So if you have any questions that were not answered during this webinar, we'll be sure to address them on October 2nd.
Yeah, and let me tell you that the purpose of that really is going to be to just provide an update for those of you who couldn't make it to Bali about what happened at Bali in those Marine Ecosystem Service Partnership and ESP marine-based sessions. So I'll just give you the lowdown at that point about outcomes, next steps, and what we can look forward to in terms of governance and projects coming out of that ESP meeting. Okay, thanks everybody.
All right, thanks Linwood, Megan, Jonathan, and Corinne. This was great, and also Nick. And I hope everyone can join some of our future webinars, and I hope you are able to utilize all the wonderful ecosystem services valuation tools that are now available. Okay, have a good afternoon.